Hypocrisy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota, and I am a little too tall today. Just a second. There we go. There we go. How we doing tonight, chat? How are you? I apologize for having to push the show back to 11:15, but I was over on Joe's channel tonight prior to the show, and I was a little late there due to some, it doesn't matter, but I was at an in-law's place kind of unexpectedly, and that scrambled my brain to the point where I was like sitting there. It's like 8:58. I'm like cleaning up. I pull out my phone and like I was washing the table and getting the kids, get inside, mosquitoes and Hispanics and Jews are out. I was joking. I'm not joking. It's true. Get inside. And then I pull out my phone and I look and I see a notification on Twitter from the following program, also known as Good Logic. And I went, oh my God, I'm supposed to be on Joe's show right now. Lady Rackets, we gotta go. So I was a little late getting on his show and I wanted to make sure I got the full appearance in there. And so I scheduled out 15 minutes late today and I'm still 1 minute late. Damn it. So bad at this. So bad. But thank you for coming tonight. Hopefully I'll say that a couple more times. And then I appreciate it. We're going to do a couple things. Tonight. The main topic, I guess. Look, last night's stream was really long and got way off into the weeds several times. Part of that is my fault, I guess, in wanting to be deferential, but also precise in the discussion. So I have some kind of closing thoughts on things that I want to clarify and reinforce from last night's debate, thoughts I had about it, and also some stuff that I've seen come up. All of my Chrome windows just closed at the exact same time. So that was fun. That was great. You know what really sucked? Oh, thank God. I thought it killed the Rumble Rants from last night. And I was about to cry. I was about to cry about that. Oh my goodness. So they are back though. I was able to restore the windows and it brought them up. The rant window from Chrome is this little separate thing that pops out, and I thought that it would be gone. But thank God it's preserved. It is preserved. That was weird. I love that face though. I look like someone kvetching over Fuentes' speech. All right, so trying to remember where I left off. So I want to just reinforce a couple things from last night, some thoughts on the discussion and the topic in general that I want to make without having to get oppressively and brutally clear on the topic. And I'll talk about why that kind of comes up in last night's show and in these online discussions. It's part of why I don't really like doing online debates that much, but I want to do that. And I also want to address some things that have come up a little bit on Twitter that I've seen today to clarify some issues and some distinctions. And this all plays in to my sort of debrief discussion and we'll say, I guess, justification of how some of the discussion went from last night. I think it's important to understand how a debate can form and why it's important to try and control the debate, even if it is tedious at times. So that's the thing. And I want to say that I thought Adam and Sitch were fantastically cordial debate partners. I want to be very clear on that, because some people will probably misinterpret my post debate statements today as like either dumping on them or being critical of them in some unfair way. That's not intended. I very much enjoyed talking to them. I will overtly state that I believe Vito was being intentionally and obviously dishonest in how he said things. Now, the only thing I can do is state that that is my belief about how Vito conducted himself when he joined the stream. And he said that that is not true. It's my impression versus his assertion. I don't know what's in his mind, but the inferences I draw are based on the experiences I've seen with how Vito does some things online. People can make up their own minds. And I will say that despite the occasional heated exchange between me and Vito and a little bit of poking fun back and forth at each other on Twitter, I don't hold any malice towards Vito over this disagreement. Disagreements happen. I don't care about them. And I will continue to maintain that every time that I've been around Vito in person, that he's cordial, he's fine, and funny to be around. Like, I don't have any problem with him like that. But I do have strong principled disagreements with some of the ways he handles things online and his positions on things that lead him to how he handles stuff. So we're going to do that. And in the context of that, the other thing I'm going to do is, as the debate progressed last night, it was already getting kind of like these long periods of discussion. I did not get to the super chats or the Rumble Rants specifically that came in. I've got all of them. I do want to address them during that sort of phase, this debrief phase, to make sure that anyone who did send in a question or comment from the debate, that at least I can try and address. If there's anything relevant to the debate that's brought up, I can try and address it during this debrief thing. So I am going to go through all of those. I do have them preserved. Although I thought I lost them. That's really glad that I didn't. And there are a couple on locals as well. And then I want to talk about some things that have come up with the Supreme Court, with Donald Trump. And I know these are probably starting to feel like a little bit of repeated topics, although I am trying to address them in specific, non-repetitive ways. Some things definitely bear repeating. And some of the things we're going to talk about with Trump, his impeachment, and the new push to put ethical restrictions on the Supreme Court are going to go into these unanswered questions of constitutionality that were raised during the first hour of discussion last night in regards to the Trump indictments on declassified or not declassified documents. Because there is this automatic desire to assert constitutional propositions in favor of our political ideologies and biases, despite the fact that we must acknowledge that many of these constitutional questions are very complicated and often unanswered, and sometimes unanswerable. And there's actually a Supreme Court doctrine for unanswerable questions that becomes very interesting. And I think we have some of those going on with the Trump stuff, not quite the same with the Supreme Court stuff, but we need to talk about these. It is going to be kind of deep Meat Canyon SCOTUS talk and constitutional review and analysis that is often absent or outright deceptively stated by the mainstream media and by influencers or commentators. Even lawyers and professors and quote unquote experts will state definitively that something exists when that is still an open question. And we have a lot of those coming up right now. And I think it relates largely to the vast polarization going on between the left and the right. I don't think that we're more polarized than ever or at some special juncture. I think we have to always guard against something called presentism, where we say that now is more premium than any other time on any subject. We can talk about that very briefly as a concept, but we always have to guard against that in our statements about how things are. But I do think that the particular point of polarization now, though it may not be in primacy over some other time, lends itself to unique circumstances with the polarization plus social media and instant communication, and a more democratized spread of information. We now have this circumstance of running into these questions more frequently in the public sphere rather than in private circles. So I think it's important to keep talking about these issues. I try to not make it tedious, and I'll try to spice it up a little bit because I know we've been together a long time, and sometimes you got to do that. I do have a couple other topics that we may get to. Chuck Grassley has released the internal FBI document, which contains allegations collected by the FBI that a Russian or I think a Ukrainian company, Burisma, and the CEO of that company references paying multiple Bidens $5 million. It is not cataloged or recorded anywhere in any sort of thing. And there are some statements that contradict that allegation. Now, the FBI and the Democrats in Congress have been very, very quick to say that this release is improper. The whistleblower who brought this out should not have done it. And it's even more embarrassing that Chuck Grassley has brought this document to light and that this doesn't mean anything. And all of these allegations are just preliminary and from an informant, and they can't be trusted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But now that they're out, I think it's critical to address them. And the reason it's critical to address them is because in an opposite position of having Donald Trump as president and allegations of $5 million payments being made to Donald Trump Jr. and Donald Trump Sr., or Donald Trump and Eric Trump, or Donald and Ivanka, or whoever, this would absolutely and obviously be discussed by Democrats in Congress in the exact same way. So we're not going to go ahead and have some issue where it's like, well, it's not proper to talk about this. I mean, obviously, these are alleged statements, and we as the general public will have no means to verify them. And we have no faith in an FBI run by the Bidens that the FBI would take those statements to light. And it's entirely possible that Biden himself would order the FBI or the DOJ to stop the investigation, as he logically could be able to do under the pardon power. But we get to discuss it because part of the pardon power, the most critical part of the pardon power, is that the president is always in check by three things, technically three. One, the potential for impeachment by Congress and immediate removal based on their behavior. Two, the ability for the electorate to not reelect a president based on their political moves that are judged by the populace. And three, the possibility that they will term out and eventually not have power anymore, which of course came later. Initially, that was not part of the president's concern. That was a gentlemanly thing done by George Washington to say, I'm only going to take 2 terms. And then, of course, after FDR was reelected for a 3rd or 4th term or whatever, they're like, you can't do this anymore. So we have these political checks, but the critical point of those political checks is that the information about the actions are to be evaluated by the public. And so if a president is pardoning someone, or even if the public can infer that the president has pardoned or ordered the Justice Department to not intervene or to discontinue an investigation, then the public can decide that the president is corruptly using powers that he is constitutionally able to use. Now, not corruptly in a criminal sense. Obviously, you cannot corruptly pardon anyone. The president's power to pardon is plenary. It is unquestionable. The only time it cannot be done is actually particularly described in the Constitution as in matters of impeachment. But can the president pardon himself? Almost assuredly he can. Can the president pardon his family? Definitely. Well, I say definitely. It's never been officially tested, but there's no prohibition on pardoning family. And even in the Federalist Papers, it discusses pardoning people who commit crimes for the purpose of bringing the president into office, hinting at pardoning for federal election fraud. Can the president pardon for that? Yes, at least according to the Federalist Papers and the people who wrote the power to pardon into the Constitution and had discussed should the power to pardon extend to matters of treason or breaches of trust, things like that. Yes, they should, because there are political solutions. So we're going to talk a little bit either tonight or on the next show about the Biden bribery allegations that Chuck Grassley, Chuck Grassley has brought to light. That is another topic. I still have the body cam of this traffic stop that was a bad traffic stop that was handled in a particular way that some people might suggest is a sovereign citizen way. Other people might suggest was just a pretty smart way in general. I think it was handled in the proper way by this gentleman, although there may be mild critiques, but overall, I think he did it right. I think the cop acted inappropriately, and I want to go through it at some point. I don't know if we're going to get through it tonight or not, but it is still on my list of things to do. So that is the general layout for tonight's show. How much of that we get to will depend on how much I blabber. And I'm trying to be very fast on my monologue tonight so we can get right into it. But I do need to announce something that is a change of plans for me that I was not anticipating because I had forgotten about this. As I mentioned when I came back from vacation with Lady Rackets back at the beginning of June, upon our return, we were informed that one of my oldest friends, who is still a very, very close friend to me, one of the few peoples I would unironically call a brother, though I do not have a biological brother. This is a person who, no matter how long, no matter whatever has come between us, if he called me up and said, I need your help, I would move whatever possible to provide that assistance, assuming it was genuine need for something and not just, hey, can you help me move a couch or something? His stepfather was murdered in another country right around the time that we were getting back from our vacation. That caused me to miss a show as I wanted to go and kind of be with the family a little bit at the time. Now, the memorial service for that person is happening this weekend. It requires me to do a little bit of travel. And because of that, I will not have a show tomorrow night. I would have mentioned this earlier had I put together that would be happening. The memorial service would be at a time where I would need to be traveling instead of doing the show. But that slipped my mind. That is happening this weekend. So I need to do that. That is a thing that is necessary. The man who was murdered was a man that I've known for around 25 years. He's been my friend's stepfather ever since his original biological father had passed away when we were teenagers. So this is someone who was influential in my upbringing and certainly was a big part of my friend's life. So I will not be streaming tomorrow night. So apologies for that, but that's the reason for it. I had anticipated streaming. I just forgot that would interfere with that thing. But I think people will understand that. And if you don't, that's fine. You get to have that opinion too. But yeah, so thank you for the grace on that one. That's the only major announcement. Shows will resume on Monday of next week as normal. And there may be something over the weekend. I say shows will resume on Monday as normal. There will not be a Monday night stream, but there will be a Monday Shabusiness stream because that trial, I believe, is progressing in the morning on Monday. And then the regular streams, I guess, the morning stream on Tuesday and the night stream on Tuesday, morning and night on Wednesday, morning and night on Thursday, morning and night, presumably on Friday. But there might be a little bit of a curtailing on some of the days of Shabusiness. I do think I have one appointment that might interfere with Shabusiness, but the goal is to stream as much as possible of that show. I know people have been waiting for another trial. I've been waiting for one where I could practically clear my schedule as much as possible and do the majority of the trial. It's supposed to be 1 week. So that is, I believe, the announcements and the sort of setup for everything. If I have missed something, it's because I'm an asshole. One more thing. I should do this more often. I'll probably drop this a couple times during the show. But if you are enjoying the shows, especially if you're enjoying this kind of new approach that I've been taking, which is more of an old approach or a return to form from a while back, really, probably well over a year ago, but just sort of this more intentional and I guess more law-focused approach to streams, please like on both Rumble and on YouTube, wherever you're watching. Please click the like button. It really does help. I know it's weird and I hate asking for shit like that, but the reality is when I ask for it, people do it more often, and the more interaction I get on stuff like that, the better it is. If you don't like the show, click the thumbs down. Leave a comment that says, "You suck, you piece of garbage." Great. Perfect. I love that feedback too. Since I missed it earlier, thank you to Joe, Good Logic, and his Raiders for joining the chat, watching the show, pumping up those numbers. Thank you for all of that. And if you guys did not see me on Joe's show earlier today, it's a good one to go back and check out. We delve into a lot of different subjects that are all relevant and important for our times. And I always like talking to Joe because I get a friendly person who will push in certain areas, even when we agree, to be more precise. So with that, let's start with the conversation from last night. The primary purpose of last night's show was a discussion about Rumble's censorship of Nick Fuentes' allegedly inflammatory speech given at an America First rally. An America First rally is a private rally held at a private place for America First people, and I guess people could buy tickets to attend. I don't actually know how you attend this rally, but it is presumably for people who want to go see an America First event. They got to go there. It was not held in a public square, to my knowledge. I believe it was held in a rented venue of some sort or other. In this speech, Nick Fuentes, shocker, said some controversial things that some people took umbrage with. All right. Particularly culminating in this conceptual statement that the Jews, I suppose generally, I'm not trying to put words into his mouth, I'm just trying to take where people seem to be drawing ire on the speech. The Jews generally, I think, are engaged, I guess, in a holy war against white Christians, but that white Christians, particularly America First, are willing to die for their beliefs and thus have an advantage over the Jew who is not willing to die for their beliefs, and that as an extension of that, the outcome of the holy war will be that the America First Catholic nationalists will live and the Jews they will make dead because they are the enemies of Christ and God will protect those who love Christ. I think that is a fair assessment of roughly what was said. That is the main statement at issue for the purposes of censorship. From what I have heard, that statement in particular is of primary concern and is censored. And there is talk out there that the removal of that particular statement or line of this, section of the speech would allow the speech to be otherwise uploaded to Rumble. I don't know if that's true. That is rumblings that rumblings. Those are mutterings I have heard from people commenting on the situation who claim to have some knowledge of the issue. I don't have special knowledge or access into this issue, nor have I asked Rumble for access or knowledge about this issue. When I get the opportunity to talk to Rumble, particularly someone in the policy area of Rumble, about this decision, my statement to them will unequivocally be nothing in this speech merited censorship on a free speech platform. I don't care how many fat Italians LARPing as concerned on behalf of Jews tweet at you, and I don't care if Elon Musk tweets about it either. My personal opinion is, as a free speech platform, you must undertake the burden to bear speech that is detestable, so long as it is within the bounds of the Supreme Court's interpretation of protected First Amendment speech. Not everyone will agree with me on that principle, but that is my opinion of when something says I am free speech or I am a free speech platform. That is what I personally believe that should mean. Now, whether Rumble will agree with me or take my advice or care at all what my opinion is, probably not. I don't have any special way to do that. I'm not saying I will leave Rumble or whatever, like if they don't, because I know that in spite of this, they still are currently more open to creator speech than any other platform I have been on, except maybe Odyssey, but I don't know. I haven't been following Odyssey's progression. So right now, like I'm not trying to leverage anything against Rumble, but if I get the opportunity, I would say, hey, you're going to market yourself as a free speech platform, which they do. I think this is a bad move. And I also think that it's a bad move for one other purpose. Now, someone has a barometer for what Rumble will not tolerate. And now they can say, you did this one, why won't you do that one? And I think that is always the problem with censorship, where you express a desire to be opposed to censorship. Now you can say, this is bad and that's not. This is bad and that's not. Well, now you got to do that one, and that one, and that one. And now you've set yourself up for a nonstop chain of things to test what is comparably bad. That is a problem with the decision. Now, some people will say the decision is advertiser motivated or whatever, and I'm sure that is a consideration that must be taken. I am not Rumble's ad department. I do not sell spots for Rumble to place automated ads, and I have no idea if there's any advertiser backlash or would be. But when you're marketing yourself as a free speech platform, I think that is a matter that you need to take as a risk. That's, again, my personal opinion. So people have said, well, what's Nick going to say to Rumble? I'm saying this on Rumble. I've tweeted and tagged Rumble on the issue. And if I get the opportunity to talk to someone at Rumble about it, absolutely would. I have no issue bringing concerns of a free speech creator to a free speech platform. And I think if they had a problem with that, that would necessarily preclude them being free speech. You cannot say you are free speech and be immune to any criticism, obviously. So that being said, this is the issue, this line of the speech. But I must say that while this is the alleged issue in contention, that particular set of lines that I talked about, the other parts of the speech provide context and a basis for inference that what was said later has a particular meaning. And some people have determined that those other parts of the speech are similarly detestable, even if they're not the reason for the removal of the video. A summary of those things, from my understanding, is the allegation that Jews, or at least the secret cabal of Jews that run the United States or the media or whatever it is, are subhuman, that they hate non-Jews, that they believe that they have power and primacy over non-Jews, and that is given to them by God as chosen people or whatever. I'm not entirely certain what all the claims are, and I never know what's, being inferred versus said, but that's the assessment that I got. And let me take it in the worst light and say that is actually definitively what he said, and I will still say none of that to me merits censorship, even if people do not like it, disagree with it, and think it is downright evil or racist or whatever. That does not merit censorship, in my opinion. Other people will have different opinions on this. So I invited Sitch and Adam on because they had some on Twitter disagreements with me on this topic. We had a discussion about it last night. That discussion ended up lasting about 5 hours. which is really, really long to discuss the topic. Eventually, Vito would join in, and I think it really kind of degenerated at that point because I find Vito's discussions on these types of topics to be dishonest. I found them to be dishonest when he attempted to call attention to Nerdrotic on Friday Night Tights, hosting Alex Jones. He tagged Team YouTube on Twitter, and he walked it back and later retrofitted the explanation that that was a joke gone wrong. I do not believe in any capacity that that was a joke gone wrong because I do remember going on the Dick Show and confronting Vito about the topic prior to it being a quote unquote joke, in which he suggested that Alex Jones should be removed from YouTube and should not be allowed to spread his lies about the vaccine and other things. So I'm not buying Vito's explanation in Alex Jones. I have no reason to buy his explanation now that he was not calling for Rumble to censor Nick Fuentes. Now, several people brought up the idea that Vito was, quote unquote, trying to harm Rumble by tagging Rumble on Twitter and posting the video clip that he put together from the speech. I have never made the assertion that Vito was out to harm Rumble in any way. I don't know where that came from. Other people mentioned Vito adding a logo to the video. The Rumble logo, my understanding is Vito took the Rumble logo from one portion of the video and moved it up into a different portion of the video because he had put subtitles on the bottom. I don't care that he did any of that at all. Personally, I don't think this was to harm Rumble. So that is an argument other people have made and they can deal with that. I think it was pretty clearly intended to draw Rumble's attention through a Twitter tag and the hopes of retweets and subsequent likes and views and all of that stuff to this video for the purpose of censoring Nick Fuentes. If anyone disagrees with that, okay. Vito disagrees with that. I believe he is speaking dishonestly about it. But that's my opinion. So why does all of this matter? How does the debate go? Why was it 5 hours? And this is one of the critical things that I want to lay out as a two-pronged sort of statement. First prong is why I don't like doing online debates in general. Online debates tend to go a couple different ways, pretty specifically. They can get very animated and inflammatory with lots of insults, and they can be very performative and funny, right? And it can be about not the points being made or the discussion being had, but rather how the discussion is had and if someone is particularly more entertaining than others. Those are fun shows. They're hilarious to watch. Oftentimes they produce great audience interaction, all of that stuff. But they don't really get to core issues. And this is an issue I care pretty deeply about. Again, Rumble being my primary streaming platform right now, along with the fact that I believe in the maximum extension of free speech possible. Very important issues to me. So I wanted to handle the debate in the other way. And the other way is a specific and oftentimes labored attempt to clarify and add precision to questions and answers being given on particular subjects. And this is one of the criticisms people have brought up in the wake of the stream, which I haven't seen too many, but I have seen this one pretty commonly. You're over-explaining, you're circling back to things. Some people would accuse me of evading questions because sometimes when questions were asked, I would ask questions in the attempt to clarify the situation being presented. Because in the event of a hypothetical situation, hypotheticals can be very useful in outlining arguments because we don't always get to judge things on what happened, but what people fear might happen. However, if you're going to pose a hypothetical, we have to make sure the factual parameters are clear on the hypothetical. Otherwise, you have to deliver an answer that is overly broad to a question that may have multiple answers that can be very specific. I'll give you a quick example that came from last night. The question was in relation to my assertion that if there are no Jews specifically present and no violence is called out to them, this speech does not pass the Brandenburg test for the incitement of violence. There is no imminent violence because there's no target for the violence and no call to action. It was posited, what if there is a Jewish person at the rally? Do they have a reasonable fear? And so my response was, well, why is a Jewish person at the rally? This is not a philosophical question as to why a Jew might find themselves at an America First rally when America First doesn't like them or something like that. And I think maybe I was being misunderstood as posing a philosophical, well, why would he be there in the first place? That's not the intention of the question. The reason the question is raised, as I tried to elicit or convey, is because the nature of their appearance is relevant to if they should be afraid. If a Jewish person is brought to the conference by America First as a friend, they probably don't have reason to fear. They may have similar agreements about the greater Jewish conspiracy that is being alleged in the speech. If they agree, then they wouldn't be afraid of the people hosting them turning on them in violence, in my opinion. However, if someone incidentally shows up in rabbi garb to this rally by mistake or by ignorance of knowing what it is, they might have more reason to be afraid if they're there. These circumstances matter, and trying to get answers to properly narrow a hypothesis from people can be very, very difficult because they want to know why you want to know and why you're not just answering the question. But if I say yes, then they'll say, well, then the speech is by extension violent or whatever, concerning, and maybe should be censored. And if I say no, they'll say like, well, why wouldn't they be scared? It's like, well, there are circumstances that are reasonable in both ways why they may not. And so I proposed a situation in history. And I know this is revisiting the thing, but this is important because this is one of the particularly criticized things. In my stress to bring out the importance of narrowing the hypothetical, I raised the proposition that in the early 1900s, Jews were forcefully removed from St. Petersburg, Russia, in an effort to get them out at least of the capital city. They became an underclass and were asked to go very politely by the Russian government of the early 1900s. Now, not all Jews, though, because some were critical elements of private industry and, more importantly, of public government. They held high positions. They did their jobs within the parameters that the government want. They became acceptable Jews for the Russian government. While everybody else is getting kicked out, should these Jews who have been assured their place to remain, be free, and participate in society be afraid of what is going on? Not necessarily. They were given a cushy position. Now, when I brought that up, they're like, why are you bringing up a different situation? I'm like, I don't know, because we have a direct analog to where someone's presence during a thing that is particularly offensive to their ethnic group had a reason to not be scared. And so under these circumstances, this is why this question matters. Maybe I didn't convey that accurately. Maybe I was too frustrated. I don't know, but that is the purpose of bringing up that event while trying to narrow a hypothetical. And if people refuse to understand that narrowing a hypothetical to parameters to make precise answers is critical to a fair discussion, then I don't know what to tell you about your ability to debate or your style of speaking about contentious issues. But for me, I think it's incredibly important to clarify what is happening in the question before I just give ground on something that I don't agree with. So that being said, if anyone's curious as to why I would do those things last night with frequency, that is why. The real question I have is, okay, why do I then have to subsequently explain this over and over and over that I'm trying to narrow the hypothetical to give a precise answer? And why is that considered dodging when I've said, I will answer this question? I just need to know the facts because these are fact specific. Again, getting into the context of Brandenburg and the Supreme Court standard for how we assess whether something is a true threat or incitement to violence, we have to know the facts. The facts actually matter. Very critically, they matter. And everything is analyzed individually by the fact set that we have. So, to anyone out there who's interested in debating contentious topics, I would strongly propose that you should similarly do that, though it can be frustrating and sometimes tedious. So, that is one of the key issues. There is another one that I wanted to get to in this, and then I will just provide an overall summary of everything. Let me find this on Twitter because this is where it came up, I believe. Oh my goodness. Where are we? Where are we? Nick says he is okay with the video being taken down. Honestly, there are too many issues with SA's side on this and many omissions, such as Nick saying he isn't referring to violence, which they should have been aware of. Wait, I did not say I was okay with the video being taken down. I'm not sure about where that comes from. Maybe he means the other Nick Fuentes. Always frustrating in that. Can I find this one discussion point? Wait, I think I applied to it. This is in response specifically to Sitch and Adam, who were discussing this with me on Twitter. So let me find it real quick. And then we can, again, summarize this thing and then get into other topics. Okay. Is this it? Yes. This was the other portion of the discussion that became very, very frustrating for me because I thought that personally this didn't get properly narrowed and was an overbroad analogy brought up by Sitch and Adam. And this is the idea of psychological associations involving advertising. Because one of the assertions, of course, is that if Rumble runs this speech, someone's ad could run on the speech, and that advertiser automatically doesn't want to be associated with America First or may not want to be associated with the speech or the hateful nature of the rhetoric or whatever. Now, I humbly and full-heartedly disagree. I humbly and full-heartedly disagree that advertisers actually generally care where their ad is run or what it is run on. With the caveat that, of course, they care when a media stink is brought up. But in the absence of an outrage culture, an advertiser wants their product seen by any and everybody, racist or not, because Coca-Cola will take a racist's money just like it will take the most non-racist person's money every time. Of course they will. Throughout all of history, companies, absent outrage, have accepted money from the most hateful people. Banks hold the accounts of murderers still and do not hold the accounts of people criticized for hate speech. This is a wild disparity that is based not on a principled stance of the business. It is based entirely on the level of outrage and their perceived effect on their business by outrage. That being said, I will push back against the bowing and catering to outrage by businesses. Now, of course, there are some genuine instances where businesses have a tangible result from something that the business does. Typically, the result of that is an intentional endorsement by a business that does not align with their customer base. And they get to make that financial decision and they get to reap that financial reward. We have very prominent, very fresh examples of this. Target having tuck-friendly swimsuits in a prominent Pride Month swimsuit display netted lost business for Target and customer outrage. Importantly, this was not whining outrage to advertisers in Target. It was Target reaping what they sowed in not respecting the general views of their business or of their customers. We also have Bud Light still suffering from their decision to intentionally send as a product endorsement a specific product to Dylan Mulvaney, presumably accompanied by money, I believe in excess of $100,000, for the purpose of social media posts about receiving the product by an influencer with millions of followers. However, this particular influencer is overt and open on a topic that is not universally agreed to by Bud Light's customer base. And it was simply being out of touch with the brand's own customers in their intentional advertisement that has cost them something like 20% of the value of the company, threatens to close down production arms, has Bud Light cases selling in some places cheaper than equal cases of water. That's embarrassing for Bud Light. But it's really, really important to understand that that isn't because Dylan Mulvaney was doing a live stream and a Bud Light ad incidentally ran at a break during a Dylan Mulvaney live stream. That's not what happened. And in fact, I am not aware of any incidental running of an ad that has actually resulted in business that was significantly lost, or even a significant association between the brand and what was being said, absent an intentional endorsement. With that, I will assert and maintain that people as a group generally do not associate ads that incidentally run on programmatic platforms like YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, wherever, with the actual content that the ad runs on. Now, obviously, if I do a Field of Greens ad read during the show, Field of Greens is at some level endorsing this channel. Don't remind them of that. They are choosing to put an ad on this show. They make that conscious decision. But the incidental ads that run on any platform are not conscious decisions of the companies. And I don't think anyone associates them in that way in any serious capacity. Obviously, there is always someone who will always do something because autism exists. But let's be real. Can you even name the advertisers that you see on most of the things that you watch online? I can't. I don't remember them. I don't care. However, the interesting byproduct of that is when I see something that I have seen multiple ads for in a different context, it may call my mind to the ad that I've seen. It has developed some level of brand or product recognition in me. That is the key of mass market advertising and why it is intangibly so valuable and why large corporations spend so much money on it. Because the idea is not that Coke runs an ad on Nick Fuentes' speech. The idea is that you have seen so many Coke ads that when you go to the store, you think, I need to buy Coke when you go to buy soda. That's just how it works. That's the goal. And so this incidental advertising is not actually of critical importance to advertisers in the way that was being asserted, in my opinion. And I will fight against that forever. So here is the result of this discussion is that Sitch made the claim, or Adam, I can't remember specifically, I believe it was Sitch, that psychological association matters. And what he used as the proposition or the analogy for it is that Judge Schrader in Kyle Rittenhouse's case refused to allow the prosecution to refer to the dead people as victims. He said that he wanted to avoid issues of prejudice, and in his courtroom, he does not allow people who are claiming to be not guilty in a murder trial to be referred to as victims. Other judges do not do this. Judge Schrader does. And the posited reason for that is that psychological association is real. So Sitch and Adam wanted to get out of me the admission that psychological association is real because Judge Schrader did this and it's based on psychological association. Of course, the purpose of this is to say, well, yes, psychological association occurs. So go, aha! Now, an advertiser is psychologically associated with Nick Fuentes because they appear next to each other, and that is the problem. But that's not true. And it again goes back to this critical element of intentionality of the association. Judge Schrader is not preventing the incidental mention of victim in the courtroom. Judge Schrader is telling the prosecution that they cannot make it their practice to refer to these people as victims, because when you allow a prosecutor to do that, as the state who must maintain the impartiality of the constitutional rights of the defendant, they will call them victims at every possible juncture because they will try to force the association of victimhood to the dead people and therefore guilt to the defendant. And that could prejudice the case. And we know that Binger, if given the opportunity, would use victim in just about every sentence he uttered in that courtroom. Because of course he would, because prosecutors are the worst people on earth. Even lower than Jews. These are jokes. These are jokes. And yes, C mentions that Richards actually referred to them as victims in closing. He did, because in other courtrooms, they are referred to as victims. And I don't believe that was the only incidental mention of victims. Now, an incidental mention of victim did not sufficiently prejudice Kyle Rittenhouse. However, a repeated mentioning of victim, particularly at closing arguments, maybe 15 to 20 times during that closing argument, could have prejudiced the jury improperly against Kyle Rittenhouse. And that is what the judge is guarding against, because the intentionality of the association is a critical factor in how psychological associations actually function. And so that is why I pushed back very hard on that. It's important to note that that's the nature of debate. I know that some people are frustrated in how I dealt with that, or how I belabored that point, or why I would not just accept it, or whatever. But I will not go ahead and just give ammunition to a fallacious comparison of two separate incidents under the guise that psychological association exists. Therefore, this psychological association is the same as that one and has the same meaning, purpose, and effect. No, thank you. With that said, that is the end of the specific points that I wanted to reinforce, readdress, that I saw come up. So I'm not going to belabor that anymore. I'm going to give a very brief summary on my overall position of this speech, which is we have problems with characterizing this speech as violent rhetoric. Here are the problems very succinctly. 1, there is no specific call to violence. None. 2, there is no imminent violence. 3, a mere inference of violence drawn from multiple factors is not sufficient, in my opinion, and does not seem to be sufficient in the Supreme Court's opinion to trip the test to make it non-protected speech under the First Amendment. In the absence of those things, my personal contention and belief is that a free speech platform should not consider it a call to violence that violates their terms of service. If you're going to call to terms of, if you're going to use your terms of service to call to terms of art elucidated by the Supreme Court, specifically a call to violence or a true threat or a threat of violence, any of those things, you should use that standard or clearly define the standard by which you will judge a call to violence. That is my personal opinion. Again, not everybody, and maybe not even Rumble, will agree with that, but I think that it should be sufficiently clear from either the language you use or from defined parameters so that we creators and our offensive speech can be properly measured to not violate those terms. I think that's critical. That's the first set of problems. And again, this all lacks imminence and all of that. If you have someone who says, well, under the circumstances, I can infer this. I'm sorry, what you can infer may be different than what I infer. And therefore, we have a difference of opinion. This is not a direct call to violence. It's not an obvious call to violence, even if you just say it must be. The next issue that I think is critical to all of this, and what I was trying to point out last night, America First is a very, the Groypers, whatever it is a very specific group of people with a specific subculture that they operate under. People may not like it. They may disagree with it. I don't care. But when you go where Groypers are, you will encounter a specific lexicon of language, of usage. It is, from time to time, maybe most of the time, anti-Semitic. It is often white nationalist. It is often populist. It is often fascistic or authoritarian right, however you describe it. I'm not rendering judgment. These are the types of language that we find from the Groypers. The interesting thing is that language is used both ironically and unironically. As a personal example, when I show up and Groypers are incidentally present, they will often call me a Jew, despite me having 0% Jewish blood in my heritage. I don't know why they call me a Jew. I have no idea. Maybe it's because I was a banker. Maybe it's because I was an investment guy. Maybe it's because I'm a lawyer. I don't know why. And now I'm in media. Shock. I don't know why they would call me a Jew. I have no idea, but it's done. It's done whether they dislike me or actually like what I'm saying. And I have this experience by being on both sides of that situation. It's just part of the terminology. It is half ironic, half unironic, and it makes it vague and difficult to understand what is going on. But it must be considered that this lexicon is particular. In addition to that, the lexicon often contains hyperbolic claims that can sound violent. About what the desired outcomes of something are. And finally, it must also be considered. How do I word this? We've got the hyperbolic claims, the mean language. Oh, yes. Irony, satire, and parody are real things that are the basis of meme dialect generally and are specifically used by America First on this issue and other occasions. Whether or not you agree with America First's assessment of Jewish law, of Talmud, of whatever, you cannot deny that there is some level of calling to the quote-unquote hypocrisy of Jewish tradition. They do this in multiple ways. The usage of Jewish tradition, the citation to the perception of the hypocritical Jewish tradition at the beginning of the speech, culminating in a holy war that harkens to the interpretation of Jewish tradition at the end of the speech, can lend a reasonable listener to infer very simply that this is an ironic criticism of Jewish perceptions throughout history being applied in the opposite way, specifically in favor of an ethno-state, a white nationalist populist ethno-state that would be the desired outcome, presumably, of a political movement similar to the Groypers. And in part of that irony is almost always a direct call to the ethno-nationalist, right authoritarian theocracy that is Israel. Whether you agree with that assessment or not, it is clearly brought up frequently amongst this particular crowd with this particular ideology, not only by Groypers, but by other people critical of Israel, Zionism, and Jewish nepotism throughout America and other countries. It is a frequent and common thing. And just because it is hyperbolic and may sound offensive to you does not mean that it merits censorship or is actually a call to violence. The use of irony, parody, and satire does not require a tag and must never require a tag or explanation or apologetic for your joke, criticism, or critique, even if it's wrong. It must not. And everyone who cares a lick about freedom of speech should be of that opinion. And if you are not, I would challenge you to reassess your principles. So, with that, should you listen to Nick Fuentes' speech? I don't give a shit. I don't listen to Nick Fuentes talk about anything. I don't really respect his opinion in any particular way. I don't disrespect his opinion. From what I've heard about it, we would probably disagree with most things. Or not, I shouldn't even say most things, with many things, but we probably agree on several points as well. I don't care. The reaction to Nick Fuentes' speech has been the first time ever that I have been interested in talking to him. Not because of what he said, but because of the reaction to it. When people are silenced and pushed away and stuffed into a box, I'm more interested to hear their opinions on things. Again, not that I'll agree, but because if someone is being deplatformed, I kind of want to hear what they have to say. That bothers some people. Okay, I don't know. With all of that, those are the main reinforced points that I wanted to put out on the speech. It should not be censored, in my opinion. I think Rumble has taken a bad step in doing it. I think that people who are calling it for being censored need to reassess their positions on free speech or need to reassess their assessment of what Nick Fuentes said. I think the words that are used are extremely critical. I think the context in which they're used are extremely critical. And I don't think proper analysis is done by taking the most offensive points of the speech and of an hour and a half speech and narrowing it into a 2-minute clip. I just don't think you can actually do that and accurately convey the meaning of the speech and determine that it's hateful and it actually not even hateful. Maybe it is hateful. I don't give a shit if you hate anybody. You can say whatever you want about who you hate, in my opinion. And finally, it's always fucking karmic, right? That people who assert that Jews have special protection over everyone else for anti-Semitism are always censored for anti-Semitism. And other people who are critical of other groups are not censored at the same rate. And part of that is just the damn fucking good marketing of the ADL and particularly and the Southern Poverty Law Center. I mean, that is just, it's the best goddamn race marketing that is out there. The NAACP doesn't hold a candle to them. Doesn't hold a candle to the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center. That being said, we do live in this this censorship reality where people go, I didn't like that. I can't just turn it off. I need you to turn it off for me and everybody else. And it's fucking embarrassing that as a country that is supposed to value individualism and freedom, that is based on those ideas and the idea of open, very unpopular speech of removing the British from the country by force, thought that that should be the most protected types of speech. The offensive parts of it. There's my fucking soapbox. Let me hit the chats from last night. We will move to Rumble right after that, and then we will continue on. Okay. Shador says, new term, fence hopper. Yes. Billdozer 74. Cuck bubble is bad imagery. Corundum. Ooh. Carbonated beverage. Corundum says, hey, Nick R. Have to say I'm a bit disappointed in your strong opinion towards Nick F. when you admit your knowledge of his positions is mostly secondhand and, in my opinion, influenced by media. Let's just go with this. Is Nick Fuentes a non-violent ethno-nationalist? If anybody can answer that question for me, I will move on. I'm going to keep reading the chats while I wait. Corundum says, not at all up to your usual standard of wanting to understand other people's positions. Nick's a pretty intelligent guy who makes many salient points. I think you should have him on. Well, I've said first time I've ever been interested is now. Yes, he is. He spiraled down the last few years. Whatever. Is he an I'm not an ethno-nationalist. We will never agree on ethno-nationalism. Do I think that ethno-nationalists are not worthy of having opinions or protections or consideration or not human? No. I just won't agree on it. It's not my cake. I won't eat it. With that, other than that, like the silly stuff, there's funny stuff said about Nick Fuentes, right? Like the cum hunting stuff is hilarious. Funny stuff is said about me. I don't know if what is always said about Fuentes is true, but it is funny. And so I'll poke fun at that the same way people poke fun about stuff that's not true about me. It's part of the nature of being in public. That's okay. It doesn't mean that I think he doesn't deserve rights, protections, or opinions, or that his opinion should be forcefully changed. I just don't share them, and I'm not really interested in an argument for ethno-nationalism. But I don't want it silenced. So that's that. But again, it's not like personal. And again, the whole he's spiraling, he's done this, he's going crazy, whatever. I don't know anything about him personally other than what people say, and I don't formulate my opinions on where he is now versus later. Again, it's these basic disagreements that I'm not super interested in hearing opinions on. Richard Spencer is, by some accounts, a smart guy, also an ethno-nationalist. I don't really need a persuasive ethno-nationalist argument because I won't agree with it. It's just, again, it's not my thing. But again, they get to speak. Corundum says, oh, by the way, Sneeko is pretty close to him, so you might need to cancel him as well. I didn't cancel Nick Fuentes, nor Sneeko. Actually, Sneeko is a prospective guest on the show. He's on my list, and I have a way to contact him. So, like, he is on my list of people I would like to have on direct examination at some point, for example. But I have no interest in canceling people. Not being interested in having a conversation with someone absent a specific reason to do so doesn't mean I want them canceled. I mean, if that's the case, I've canceled approximately 8 billion people who I will never have on the show. But that's a silly standard. If I say actively, I will not talk to Nick Fuentes, it's maybe a little different, I guess. But I do want to point out one thing. Someone asked him a long time ago if he would talk to me, and he said, no, that guy's lame. Did Nick Fuentes cancel me because he refused to have me on the show? No. He had a personal judgment about me. Valid, invalid, I don't know. I don't care. I don't know what he based it on. It doesn't matter. But he didn't want to do a show with me. Cool. Great. Neither do most people. So this isn't like a thing that is an issue. So this is always a weird thing. Like, you're refusing to platform. A lot of people have asked to come on the show, and I often say, well, what are we going to talk about? What are the topics? Is there something interesting? Are you presentable on a microphone? Like, are you engaging? I don't know a lot. Like, Fuentes, I can tell, is a decent conversationalist. But do we have something to talk about other than just a general topic? Because I don't want to talk to Nick Fuentes about general topics. It'd be awkward. And I don't want to bring up a bunch of drama shit on him. I don't think that's really fair. So if we have a topic, in this case, censorship about hate speech over the Jews, that's interesting to me. Avi Kane says, if all the Daily Wire commentators, the only one that was still anti-Trump until he won was Ben Shapiro. He's always been a closeted anti-Trumper, but enough about furniture. Let's talk about Birch Gold. DSP Games says, didn't 3 of Trump's attorneys immediately resign after he was charged in the classified documents crimes because he lied to them about all the docs being handed to the feds and had his manservant hide them? That is a way to frame it, I guess. I don't think that's quite accurate. I think the resignations involve the potential that attorney-client privilege could be pierced and they may become fact witnesses in the case in which they cannot represent him if they are fact witnesses. Now, maybe they have claimed that he lied or something like that. I don't know. That's a possibility. I'm not aware of an attorney resigning and then claiming that their former client lied, because that would actually potentially be an ethical breach and would subject them to sanctions and even disbarment if they did that. You don't get to badmouth a client after resigning from their case. You don't get to claim that they did an illegal activity and asked you about it. Like, that specifically is not what you can do. So I don't think that's the issue, but maybe it is. I don't know. Kate Campbell, 48, says these classified charges are all about protecting General Milley because Trump took the proof that Milley lied about Trump wanting to attack him. Ginger Ninja 1776 says, when Adam gets excited, he sounds like Jimmy Darts. They can't starve you says, good evening, Mr. Ricada. Could you call Vito a figgot on my behalf? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you, sir. I think I did. Mr. Higio says, Nick, whatever happened to your weird legal theory series that you thought of doing when you were talking about crimes across four corners? I talked about this on Joe's show very briefly. That question came up organically while I had four lawyers on the stream. We had a fun conversation about it. The actual practical matter of finding these weird legal hypotheticals and exploring them and being able to schedule the time is much more difficult than when it happens organically. So it's just something, it would be fun, but it's also really hard to organize. Lucy Lemonbug says, holy shit, we're not in Kansas anymore, boys. Legal Vices says, punish thought crimes. THOT. The Jacks of Terra Argentum says, why wouldn't Jews organize a cartel of power to advance their ethnic group above others? Us Latinos do it. The Irish utterly took over the U.S. to do it. The Anglo-Dutch did it. Why not Jews? I don't know. I mean, one of the criticisms of Jews generally is Jewish nepotism. The defense of that is, well, people treat us bad, so we treat our own people, to kind of compensate for that. There's an argument back and forth, but how you interpret that is certainly open. I don't know. I don't think the idea that there are interested Jewish people who are interested in advancing Jewish interests is all that offensive or complicated. Like, that doesn't strike me as I need to be worried about that speech. Maybe how it's categorized or characterized is what bothers people, but there are white people that do it too, and black people and whatever. Like, we see it all the time. People are tribal. With frequency, they are tribal. Is tribalism good, bad? Difference opinion on that and different circumstances. So who knows? Dova Kanye says, enough talk about Fuentes. Let's talk about the Joish question. Good logic's presence is not required. Roadflow 1804 says, I sometimes watch Fuentes, Fresh and Fit, a few of Nick's people on Cozy. Let me recommend a couple books: Jesus in the Talmud by Peter Schaefer and Constitution in Crisis by the Federalist Society. Then come back. I'm not going to read those. I mean, thank you for the recommendation, but I have a giant reading list that I have not gotten to. He also says, question, if someone's kicked out of various establishments over 100 times in his life for being overtly or covertly destructive to these places, would you think they're a potential threat elsewhere? Again, this is part of the, well, shouldn't we be suspicious of Jews because of their historical capacity to be removed from countries? The counter argument would be, isn't everyone just prejudiced against these people? I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle of those things, as most truths do. Zidigayanyam says, okay. What the fuck name was that? DSP Gaming says, Nick, I don't know, and I guess to Sitch questioning his gay libertarian what-ifs about Jew conspiracy theories shows you nothing and how weak your arguments are. Take the massive L, Nick. DSP Gaming was very, very angry and animated during this discussion, and I'm not sure why. It was really funny and interesting to watch. Like, again, so I don't know, and I guess are I don't know, and then I guess is I'll accept the premise, I guess. Okay, I accept your thing. That's what I guess is. I don't know why that is complicated or complex or in some way evasive. If I say I guess, okay, I guess. Does that matter? Does it change things? I accept your premise that Nick Fuentes' speech is particularly offensive to Jews and he wants a white ethno-state with no Jews. Okay, speech is still protected. I guess I accept that. The speech is still protected. So I'm not sure what specific context this was, but yeah, I don't know. And I guess are things that I will use when I don't know or when I guess I'll accept your premise. DSP Gaming says, Adam, there's only so much Jew gold to hand out. Got to keep the population small so you don't go broke handing out the Jews or handing out the gold they keep around their necks. And DSP Gaming says, why was that important? Nick, stop being stupid. The damn country burned down. I wonder why it might be important for cops to have a light hand when dealing with black suspects. You're being obtuse. Oh boy. This is the complicated discussion we had about the interrelations between blacks and cops, the perceptions about them, the realities about them, why all of that matters. And again, the question and the practicality of it is going to depend a lot. Changing cops by media is easier than changing black cultured indoctrination against cops. Like, the media is not going to come out and offer FBI statistics on police violence involving blacks and police violence versus whites and go, look, you're less oppressed, when their dad, grandpa, wait, I said the mistake, dad, their mom's dad, brother, when everybody they know has told them that cops hate them, the media is saying, but they don't actually, though, because of these statistics, will never change the cultural reality. The media, if they want to change the interactivity of cops and blacks, they're better focused on cops. It's more likely to produce a result. Is it honest? No. It's not honest, but if you're trying to affect it, you will direct your, I guess, coverage towards the outcome you're more likely to achieve. Does that make it right and pure? No, the media is not right and pure. Are the media's motivations correct? No. But it is what they're doing, obviously. Okay, anyway, the Most Banned Queen says, this is the first time I've watched a debate on YouTube and there not be a meltdown by one of the parties involved. Thank you all for keeping your cool so I could actually follow the conversation. DSP Gaming says, Nick, you libertarian fig, you cannot say, I don't care, and maybe to all the questions you're asked. You're purposely being obtuse after trying to get Adam and Sitch into a corner with your gay arguments. Not trying to get into a corner with anything, although it is interesting how often they walked into it. Nomad Vodka says, do Slavs benefit from a white society? Their skin is white, yet they can't be white due to mixed genetics from slavery. Ukrainians have more Asian DNA than Poles, who have more Jewish DNA. Ukrainians must be better at math than Poles. Relflow 1804 says, here's a list of people to have on to discuss the Jewish question more. Oh, yes. Again, first thing on my list to do, Nick Fuentes, Vincent James, Lauren Witzke, John Doyle, Henrik Palmgren, Myron Gaines. Nick, thanks for all the devil's advocacy against the myopic. It's devil's advocacy against censorship, but I do not have personal interest in exploring the Jewish question. I don't want to stop anybody from doing it. It's not in my list of things to generally talk about. I don't know about all of the Jewish conspiracies throughout history. I can't cite to the lexicon of people who are critical of Jewish history. I can't do it. I don't speak the language. It's not on my list of things. But please discuss it wherever you want and in the open and without the boot of censorship on your neck. I think that's critical. Idosphere says, Adam is possibly the dumbest person I know of now. Wrestler Town says, can people stop having Sitch and Adam on shows I watch? They can't see 10 seconds in front of their face and accuse people who can of changing the topic. Feels like talking to an amnesiac. DSP Gaming, Nick's answers to Adam and Sitch saying they have data and studies. Well, I think. Dude, you have no argument other than saying, I think you're wrong and come as retarded tonight. Sleep it off. This guy was seriously frustrated with the discussion. And again, you can have all the data and statistics in the world, but if you cannot communicate it to an audience who is unwilling to listen to you, they don't matter. Tell me, if you will, which Black Lives Matter person was convinced by an anti-Black Lives Matter white person that the FBI statistics on crime meant that black people weren't oppressed by the system, that systematic racism did not exist. I'll wait. Doesn't mean the person with the statistics was wrong. It just meant that communicating them over and over at people who inherently disagree with you isn't going to function. And people would similarly say that people who present counter evidence to the Jewish question are ignored by people who are skeptical of Jewish control. Right? Like, if a rabbi comes up and tells Nick Fuentes the history of Judaism, he's going to go, "You're lying." I think, right? I'm not crazy in that would be his primary or initial reaction. Prime Inc. says, read Rory Sutherland. He has a lot of information on the psychology, including subconscious aspects of advertising. Enjoyed the discussion tonight. Woboa says, you aren't enlightened centrists. You're vain pseudo-intellectuals, and you lack self-awareness. Marsupial Gamer says, Vito, why did you apologize tearfully on Flashcast for doing this exact thing, contacting YouTube and false flagging videos? Was that just to sell more of your failing comic book? Snuggle Struggle says, pretty sure all working at Rumble do not collectively agree on everything. So how might Fuentes' speech now be the position of Rumble itself? Shock and awe to be forced upon the entire platform. He also says a personal perception is not always good. Look to platforms like Facebook and Twitter during the 2020 presidential election. So many leftists demanding Trump and his supporters be rounded up and worse. Yep, absolutely. TSP Gaming says, Nick, you fig. This has already happened with the Crown Heights riots in 1991. Al Sharpton instigated anti-Jewish sentiment, and Yankel Rosenbaum was killed by a group of black people. You sick ass. DSP Gaming must be Jewish? Is that what's going on? I'm very confused. Again, I did not ask if violence has ever been rallied against Jews through a speech. I think there's some history of that, some evidence that it's happened. I asked if America First, if the Groypers have been associated with any violent acts at all. And until they have, I think it leans towards being unreasonable that they're suddenly going to be motivated to violence by rhetoric that is not uncommon among them. It's hard to find a reasonable propensity for violence where no violence has existed under the same conditions in the past. It doesn't mean that violence won't happen. Again, it's about the reasonableness of the anticipation of it and the imminence of it. Snuggle Struggle says, Vito's hypothetical scenario would mean every single conservative should fear for their lives due to what Democrats said on social media during the 2020 presidential election. Joseph Kerwin says, Vito has the capacity to be a decent person, which makes his persistent loathsomeness particularly tragic. Snuggle Struggle says, Vito claims speech itself is a threat, but look who has been murdered. Republicans, a kid that voted for Trump was run down. Some Antifa thug murdered a guy wearing a Trump hat. Lady at the Capitol. Shezkos says, pet peeve, waiting for the latent gay only to find out his guests are not smart, boring, and hide their faces and cashing in on their self-assumed good looks. Just saying, who subs these dudes? Shesko also says, why using Avatar? Lame. Joseph Kerwin says, Vito leaves a trail wherever he slithers. Snuggle Struggle, once again pointing to Richard Spencer, the guy who told his followers to vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016, posted a pic on Twitter of his ballot. White supremacy is not owned by political party. I didn't say it was. Tom Blow says, since one trans activist shot up a school and killed 3 children at a Christian schools, should they all be deplatformed? What is going on TikTok? No, of course not. Crispy Legs says, I see what he's doing, what Vito did, I guess. Crispy Legs says, Vito seems like a coward. Kosk says, absolutely wild how PSA Sitch turned out to be the same guest by the end. Adam just seems like a bad faith conversationalist, and Vito is Vito. Snuggle Struggle says, Vito, use archive.org/web. Take a gander at Democrats targeting conservatives, rhetoric being promoted on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook during the 2020 presidential election. Truly abhorrent speech. Andres Bergen says, thank you so much for this discussion. So great to see a free speech discussion that is decent. Those are the questions from last night on Rumble. Let's do the YouTube ones from today, and then we will move to Rumble exclusively and carry on. Seize the Day says, you're too nice. No to trolls. You owe nothing to anyone. Pony Up says, bringing Vito on was a mistake. They boxed you in. Oh, wait. Yeah, that's today. I don't think they boxed me in, actually. I don't think that their argument was fruitful in any way, personally. I'm curious how many people found their side of the argument more persuasive. That, I guess that's the interest. I mean, I clearly think that my side's correct, but I am curious who thought their side was more correct, or more importantly, did either side change your mind? Might be the better question. Bad Vibe says, Nick, they didn't debate in good faith. They accepted the media's role in outrage, but didn't seem accepted that a hierarchy exists and who is in it and not, nor did they accept that advertisers have retroactive remorse. Dick Ricada says, Cope stream, baby. Asking why and why, though, a dozen times in a row isn't the 4D chess high IQ move. Your whiskey-addled mind thought it was at 4 a.m. Again, if you don't understand why you need to clarify points in a debate that is fact-specific, that's on you, brother. You may not like the topic, but I'm not going to allow gloss to be a gotcha. And the fact that other people are willing to allow gloss to be a gotcha is a criticism of their ability to debate or see what's going on in the discussion, in my opinion. Scorpion Black Dragon says the purpose of the release is to ask if the FBI confirmed or disproved the details reported by the CHS and what they did thereafter. Mr. Bentham says, could you explain why it is that you are so gay? I was born that way, baby. The Cuban says, my condolences, Nick. Thanks. Ovid says, love the return to old format. Love you with Sitch and Adam. Would love to see you three curb stomp a commie. Can you educate them on the subway? You cut for old time's sake. Not today, but sure. Mr. Bentham says, hypothetically, if you were to get pegged by a Fuda, would that Fuda have balls or no balls? Balls is the only proper answer. God. Marsupial Gamer says, Hard Bastard was talking about you all day today. He's going to EFAP the debate tomorrow. You're the only major streamer who's gotten this issue right. Oh, man. I like Hard Bastard a lot. I said, oh, man, because he's going to EFAP that. That was a long stream to EFAP, but hats off to him. Bad Vibe says, imagine if these same debaters treated anti-white rhetoric the same as Fuentes. Delilah Zin says, hey, to clarify, is this a trans-friendly stream? Friendly to everybody, of course. Also says, I've been listening to your coverage of the Rittenhouse cases and really enjoying it. Now, look, since I think that question was asked in good faith, I will answer it a little bit more in depth than just a flippant one. Once someone is 18, I do not have any opinion on what they do to their body and what they choose to do. If they want to identify and then I guess surgically express some gender, I don't care. I don't care what you do. What I don't want is people endangering or putting permanent surgical decisions on children based on a potentially temporary issue. And I think that is happening right now. And I think there's an overt push towards that in the name of the movement, if not in the name of something more nefarious. But in general, trans people don't care. No trans people, like various trans people as friends, doesn't bother me at all. I might not do it or particularly understand it, but that applies to damn near everything anyone does other than me. So trans friendly, sure. We the Rabble says, imagine living in a world where we would spend this much time talking about a dumb person saying dumb things. Isn't he just a poop poster IRL? I don't know. Some people take Nick Fuentes very, very seriously. They're terrified of his worldview and his influence, which subsequently leads me to think that that terror is actually increasing his influence. And the penchant for censoring him and removing him from everything, I think actually increases his appeal to some people. Maybe young white men who are increasingly feeling ignored, shunned, vilified, depressed, and hopeless about their futures, which is backed up by data and observation. When you do that, and then someone says, hey, young white men need a chance in this world, and we're not going to get it because of X, it doesn't always matter what X is if X becomes an adequate explanation for your situation that you are not happy with. And if they feel oppressed and they see someone they admire who's explaining their situation as being oppressed because they are disfavored, if they see that person be censored, Guess what that reinforces? Their feeling of depression based on their characteristics and belief that are shared by this person who is offering them answers. When you do that, you cement loyalty, you don't remove it. You add and amplify the signal, you don't suppress it. And it's so weird that this happens over and over and over. All right. We the Rabble says, in high school, we had a Holocaust survivor come tell us his story, a real tearjerker, until that Jew started yelling, Jesus was a Jew at us like I should care. It was in that moment, I realized the Germans dropped the ball with that one. Oh my God. Aisha Frazier says, the guy who trolled the WNBA by buying courtside seats and going to sleep on them got kicked out and banned. Does he have grounds to sue? All he did was sleep. No, typically part of the contractual agreement for your license to attend an event, I know it's weird to frame buying a ticket that way, but that's what it is. It is your license to be present at the thing, the entertainment event, is subject to being removed for any reason deemed acceptable, limited, of course, by reasons of race, religion, gender, things like that are protected under the Civil Rights Act. So if they believe that your presence there is subject to removal by the people hosting the event. And oftentimes you will not have grounds to sue when that happens. Sherry Lawless says, who's Vito? I missed it. More importantly, when will you have Razor Fist back on? Love both of you guys. Hopefully soon. Delilah Zena says, as a trans woman, I 100% agree. The most I am comfortable with for minors is hormone blockers. Different topic. Your thoughts on Dr. Jordan Peterson? I like Jordan Peterson in a lot of contexts, but I think he is starting to miss the point based on his personal experiences, and he is applying his personal experiences into bad takes on things like privacy and trolling and other issues. He's quick to call online trolls psychotic or neurotic or whatever, and ascribe psychological conditions to people who make fun of him. And I think that is the improper approach. But I do like a lot of the encouraging and solution-based things he's recommended for young men to try and improve their lives. I think that's a great influence. And I think his pushback on a lot of the public speech issues has been good. Generally, I like him, but I also like to make fun of him when he does things that I think are stupid. So with that, we are done on YouTube. We're going to move over to Rumble. I hope you will come join me over there. The link to Rumble on YouTube is at the top of the chat. It is a pinned comment, or it is in the description. Make sure you come by and hang out with us over there. I will see you after this short musical interlude. Have a good night, guys. Peace. Peace.
For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, ladies and gentlemen,